Start. Okay, hi, I'm Oscar. I work for Fink. We're a little company in Switzerland, and we modernize legacy software systems. And the approach that we take is called moldable development. The idea is to take the software system and open it up so that we can see the internal domain concepts, and we make them live and explorable. One important component of moldable development is example-driven development, which is what I'll talk about today. Our platform is called Glamorous Toolkit, or our substrate, if you will. What we see here is the Glamorous Toolkit book. The GT book is a knowledge base of notebook pages. And what we see here, for example, is a notebook page describing the Ludo game, a game for children in which tokens move around a board on the roll of a die. And we've documented some of the kinds of moves in this game with various examples. A particularly interesting one is this example here, which is an impossible move. This move cannot be made on a roll of 6 because it would take us off player B off the end of the board. What's interesting about this is we can dive into this, and here we see the state of the game that we got to. This is a live instance of the game, so that's a particular view we have here. We can dive in and see the players of the game and inspect those. We can look at the squares of the game. We can even go through the history of the moves of the game. And what's kind of cool is that we can then have a kind of back-in-time debugger, if you will, for free, where we can step through and see all of the states of the game. This, by the way, what we're seeing here is just an object inspector. It happens to be a moldable object inspector. So normally what you would see in an object inspector is this thing. And what instead we have is we have custom views, tiny little tools that make the environment explorable. So little bits of code that will configure these. What are we actually seeing here, however? This guy, this example, is just a little snippet of code. And it's grabbing the result of this method, which is a game showing all moves. And what is this thing? Well, it's just a test case. Here we have a setup. Here we perform some actions. We have a bunch of assertions. So, and there's even an annotation saying what it is. It's a test. Well, it's an example. The only thing that's different is we return the instance of the game. The object under test is returned. What this means is that instead of just having a green test, we actually get an object back that's live. Now, this is interesting because now we can actually compose these guys. So this test was actually made up from another test that returned an object. And you can see where this is going. We actually get a, come on. We actually get a tree of examples. So examples composed from other examples. And of course, when we run these guys, if something fails somewhere along the way, the dependent tests won't get run. The reason it didn't run anything because some of these, it's only running the examples in this class, and we're actually reusing them in other classes as well. Okay, so what's an example? An example is just a test that returns an object, an example. That's what an example method is. Why is this cool? It seems like such a trivial minor change. It's actually fundamental, and it's a cornerstone of what we do. It means that an example isn't just a green thing, which is, okay, the test is green. What can I do with this? Nothing. Nothing. You can stare at the code. Only if a test is red is it really useful. Well, in our case, green tests are useful. We can build other examples from them, but we can do a whole bunch of other things as well. So here's a partially implemented example. I've got a film collections example here. It's actually coming from IMDb. So I've grabbed here an IMDb file from IMDb, and I grabbed the CSV by pulling the data from that file, and I grabbed the JSON from that, and finally I wrapped the JSON as a collection object. So these are just tests that return objects. Now I can dive into this guy, and I see a whole bunch of movies here. This is only partially implemented. I'm working on it. And I can dive into them. So I have film objects and film collection objects. I see, oh, there's all sorts of other things that might be interesting to show in here. In fact, there's a directors field here. So we can actually look at the source code, or we can talk to the object and see, oh, well, there's a directors field. We can verify that talking to the directors actually returns something interesting. Why don't we have this over here? So we can actually go to the source code of this custom view, and we can edit it. We say, okay, well, let's have directors and directors here, and we'll save that, and bing, it's updated live. Notice I wasn't programming in a text editor. I'm programming in the live environment using the inspectors. Running out of time here. Last thing I wanted to quickly show you is how we can use examples for all sorts of interesting things. We've got way too many examples of examples, but here's an example of explaining a squarified tree map algorithm that comes from this great paper which has the description of the algorithm as a diagram in the paper, but we can do much better than that. We can turn this into a live example, which we can now explore. So we can see the squarified tree map avoids getting these elongated nodes by going step by step through the steps here. We're adding a node one step at a time. Here I am. And I find that if I add this node, it's going to break a threshold, and so we don't want it there. We're going to push it over somewhere else. So by having live examples, we can also explain algorithms. Good. I've run out of time, and my final slide is just the summary. Examples are a combination of tests and factories. We can compose them, use them for further development, stick them into live documentation. And what I didn't talk about, but you can see it in the paper, there's a link in the proceedings, it actually leads to a different style of development. The system is open sourced. You can download it and play with it. I'll be here all week. You can talk to me. Thanks.